Rico, do you have any questions?
And like the elephant in the room is like, okay, we're talking about the British, or there's England, here's Austria, here's A, and blah, blah, blah. But in fact, it's the elephant in the room is I want to say there's the German say the best.
Mm-hmm. So there's this cultural concept or divide, which is kind of a construct between East and West.
Yeah, East, West,
Yeah.
and South, and North. There's a book I read years ago, Crash of Culture.
Crash of Cultures, that's a famous book, yeah.
And it's also very controversial. But what do you think is the
Well, that's a difficult question. Let me see if I can put it in different. So what he's saying is, in the classic cultures, one of the concepts, the political science concepts that we've always, I'm sure you were at university and we were kind of indoctrinated with, is the concept between West and East, which was a construct, a system construct, versus once we kind of overcame that, it became an issue between North and South, the economical versus political and military. And I think what Rico is referring to is that the elephant in the room for him as a citizen is, at the end of the day, he feels it's a war of cultures where if I understand this correctly, are we superimposing our values? For example, you've been in the Middle East very often. I think one of the things they're very sensitive to, on one hand, they embrace, I think, the Western concept to a certain extent, but only to a certain extent. And then they have this principle, hey, but we are we as well, or it's our culture matters as well. What's your take on this? I think what all cultures kind of have is this, and it comes from Chinese history, this concept of center of the universe or center of the world kind of mentality. How do you feel that plays into our political situation right now, and what do leaders have to do in the future to kind of counteract that maybe?
So it goes back to that original question, what do we stand for? And after the Second World War, we had that sort of big reset, what's called the Bretton Woods moment, if you like, where we created the United Nations, the World Trade Organization, the IMF, the World Bank. And they did well, got us through the Cold War, and then we became complacent. And what's happened is that other nations are now exploiting our complacency to uphold those values and standards, which we've not been willing to defend. And they now realize actually that perhaps it's not been in their interest to play ball along those lines. Why don't we try something else, which is a little less intrusive, doesn't ask so many questions about democracy, about human rights, about the rule of law. And of course, I'm referring to Russia, China, and Iran, particularly North Korea. But others as well, in the global south, as they're loosely called, are now realizing actually there's a competition here for the Bretton Woods construct, that actually our world could be splintering into two, and I'm not sure who's going to win. In fact, China looks like it might overtake America militarily, economically, technologically. They'll become more dominant if they continue on their current path. Well, why should I hang around listening and supporting America? Particularly when I see what's going on in America, doesn't look particularly attractive. Therefore, actually, I'm just going to keep myself to myself. I'm not going to bother challenging the interruption, the exploitation of our rules-based order. China wants to do something, fine. I'm not going to rock the boat. And that, I'm afraid, is where we are right now. It's because
But that's not what you're for, I don't believe.
No, that's the reality. You talk about realpolitik. That's where our world currently is.
Oh yeah, I think the concept of opportunism, and I think the democratic principle has been strongly undermined by capitalistic principle, and I think I find it so strange that we are kind of endorsing more a feudalistic concept of society with robber barons and disparity of wealth than actually democratic principles. I think that's a big challenge that we face.